right now is American Enterprise Institute Asia Fellow, former Department of Defense and National Security Council staffer, Zack Cooper. Zack, thanks very much for being here. What do you expect to happen on this virtual call between EU and Chinese leaders? And what's your take on what the EU wants from this CCP right now?
I think this is going to be exactly like the Biden-Xi call that happened a few weeks ago. I wouldn't expect any breakthroughs. I think these are going to be very difficult discussions. Probably no breakdowns either. You know, both sides will probably talk about Ukraine, but frankly, I don't think there's any agreement that they can make. China is going to continue to back Russia. There are huge costs for China in doing so, but I just can't see the Chinese government shifting its approach at this point. If it was going to do that, it would have done it several weeks ago. And so now I think China's basically stuck. It said it has a no limits partnership with Russia, and now it's going to pay the costs.
Well, Zack, look, on that phone call between President Biden and President Xi Jinping, we didn't get any details. The White House told us that they put in front of Xi Jinping consequences for China if they further help Russia. But all I know is the day after the call, President Biden was all over the place talking about this new world order. So my assumption is that that's what Xi Jinping told President Biden on the call, that there's a new world order and China's in charge. So Joe Biden repeats new world order. What's your take on this new world order that Beijing and Russia are hoping to materialize?
Well, I don't think there was any sort of agreement made on that call. And my readout from the White House was that the two leaders both read their talking points, and there were just no areas of agreement, right? The Chinese basically want to have some concessions from the United States on issues like Taiwan in exchange for some progress on their policies about Ukraine and Russia. That's just not going to happen. And so now I think where we find ourselves is both the United States and Europe are appealing to the Chinese to try and change their policies and trying to convince the Chinese that this is going to have cost to China. And I just don't think the leadership in Beijing is willing to listen to that right now. But there's some real downsides here for Beijing. You know, there's a survey out of Germany just the last few days suggesting that 57% of German companies are rethinking their business activities in China as a result of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. So this is going to have some real downside risk for Beijing.
Yeah, it's a great point. Meanwhile, the president's so-called deterrent strategy did not work. It failed to prevent a Russian invasion. There are reports now that Russian President Vladimir Putin is being misinformed by his own advisors on Russia's failures in Ukraine. What does that mean for Xi Jinping and its plans for Taiwan? I know you believe that he's taking lots away and looking at Taiwan, but should the U.S. be doing now to Taiwan what it should have done with Ukraine months ago? What is your expectation for Taiwan?
Yeah, it's a great question, Maria. I think the real concern here is that there's a concept called integrated deterrence that the Pentagon has been talking about a lot. It's the core of the new national defense strategy. And the basic logic is that the United States can do other things, other tools, other than military tools, to deter actions abroad. And I think the reality is that that just didn't work in Russia. Now, we can have a debate, as Joe Biden has, about whether they were really trying to deter in the first place. But at the end of the day, if we're thinking about a Taiwan crisis, we can't rely just on economic sanctions to deter China. We're going to need some military tools. And so what we should be doing now is working very closely with allies and partners to bulk up not just Taiwan, but our key allies in the region and our posture in Asia as well. And I certainly hope that's what we're going to see out of the new defense strategy over the next few months.
Yeah, I don't think there's plans for that, Zack. I don't see that plan materializing at all at the White House right now. And China won't even denounce Russia. The leadership in China said that the sanctions against Russia were wrong. Both countries are saying that they're more determined than ever to boost competition and build this new world order. They met earlier this week, Russia and China. They've condemned the, quote, illegal and counterproductive Western sanctions imposed on Russia, as if Russia should not have any consequences for invading a completely unprovoked, peaceful country. Zack, your thoughts on where this is going in terms of China and Russia's partnership?
I think the partnership is as strong as ever. So just yesterday, Foreign Minister Lavrov met with his Chinese counterpart, and they agreed that we should have a more multipolar and more democratic world order. I mean, a democratic world order centered on Russia and China, it's a pretty strange concept. But I think part of the problem here, as you noted earlier, is Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin, they're believing a little bit of their own messaging. And that messaging, in many cases, is alienating much of the rest of the world. But I think it's convincing a lot of people in China and some in Russia as well that this approach of tying Moscow together so closely with Beijing is the right path forward. I think it's going to be incredibly damaging for China and for its standing abroad. But it's not clear that Chinese leaders or experts see it that way.
Yeah, great point. All right, Zack, good to have you this morning. Thanks very much for your analysis. Zack Cooper joining us this morning.